On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, we continue our player profile draft preview series with a look at Cason Wallace out of Kentucky, the guy who might be the dream pick for the Raptors if in fact they're looking for a true point guard to add to their mix. We'll get into why he's not quite at the top of my board, but he's very, very close coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks so much for hanging.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, May the 26th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 9 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Twitter at WoodleySean. You can follow, subscribe to, rate, and review the podcast for free on your favorite podcast apps and on YouTube, of course, if you want to catch the video feed each day. We're also on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course, the Locked On Raptors Discord, baby. It's the place to be. Go to the link in the description, and we got a lot of great folks hanging out in there, talking trades, talking off-season machinations, talking playoffs, talking Blue Jays. The Blue Jays. Barf. But it's fun to be sad about sports among friends. Come hang out in the Locked On Raptors Discord. A great place to be, especially as we get into the draft and all that's going to entail, both with draft picks and, of course, trade speculation. We love it. Go check it out. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, on today's show, we're digging into Cason Wallace, the second player we're taking a full episode to chat about as, potential candidates for the Raptors at 13. There's a lot of them. We're going to have at least, I would say, close to a dozen episodes on these guys, just because it's a wide range between, I would say, 6 and 18 in the draft, where a lot of guys could go in a lot of different places, and I am pretty excited to dig into all of them here. And starting off with a couple of heavy hitters, Kobe Bufkin, I really think it's going to be hard to knock him off the perch as my favorite guy for the Raptors at 13 right now. But today's guy, very much in consideration for that. I can certainly be, compelled over the course of the next month to tilt my preference over towards Cason Wallace, because he is a really exciting prospect. We'll dig into what he does well, maybe some areas for improvement, and a pretty sort of widely held comparison in the NBA in Jrue Holiday to Cason Wallace. We'll dig into whether or not there's any merit to that. I don't love comps necessarily, but we'll get into it because it's not all that crazy. Off the top, though, let's just kind of give you the tail of the tape. Cason Wallace, 6'4" point guard, 195 pounds, played at Kentucky as a freshman this past season, 11.7 points a game, 3.7 boards, 4.3 assists, 2 steals, half a block, 2.1 turnovers, like that 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio, 51.4% on twos, 34.6% on threes, 75.7% from the free throw line, and a true shooting percentage of 54.3, which is not amazing or anything like that, but it's not awful. And it's important to sort of always keep in mind the context of the college game and the lack of space and the way certain players might be inhibited a little bit by the situation you find in college. We'll get into why that might actually be a reason for some optimism as far as some of his weaknesses coming up in the second segment. But for me, Cason Wallace, the case not to make a pun, the case for Cason is that he's the guy that you hope you can take at 13 if you're looking at moving on from Fred VanVleet and looking into the point guard of the future, right? And that's not to say that you draft Cason Wallace and you're just free to let Fred walk and we're all set. We got Cason Wallace. That's not how this works. Rookie point guards are almost never good and never positive on the floor. And so you're not drafting Cason Wallace necessarily to take over right away. But I think if it comes to pass that the Raptors retain Fred VanVleet, which I think they should be trying to do, because I don't see a notable upgrade out there for his skill set to be found anywhere else, and I'd rather just retain the player who's good, who you'll be able to trade on the next deal. I feel pretty confident in that. There will be teams out there who are desperate, who need a Fred VanVleet. You'll be able to make that move, but Cason Wallace gives you that guy to fill in the event of you sign Fred VanVleet and then move on from him down the line. In the meantime, as much as Cason Wallace was sort of the go-to point guard for Kentucky, he doesn't profile as someone who's exclusively a point guard. Eventually, maybe that's where you want him to grow into, but as of right now, the thing about Wallace is he can kind of do it all. Like, he can play off the ball. He's a good catch and shoot three-point shooter right now. Actually, that's probably the way more refined part of his game right now than his on-ball creation stuff, as we'll get into. And, again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you move on from Fred this summer. In fact, I think like a Wallace-Fred backcourt could be pretty interesting, and give you a lot of juice there. And, Wallace will be able to play either guard spot, I think, throughout his entire career. I had a weird accent there. Guard. Either way. You can't go into next year, let's just put it this way. You can't go into next year with Cason Wallace being your only plan for point guard and pretend to be a serious team. That's not going to happen. But he does a lot of stuff outside of that traditional point guard table setting, where he can work off ball, cut, do the type of thing, while also being a really, really excellent defender, that he should be able to contribute at least coming out of the gate in year one as more of an off-ball guy. And then maybe you scale him up as an on-ball creator as time goes on, as maybe he moves on and takes the Fred VanVleet reins or whatever it might be. I'm less of the mind that the Raptors have to go and get themselves like a specific positional sort of need. Like, I don't think you have to go and get like a pure shooting guard or a pure point guard. Just get a good player who can help and can play off of Scotty Barnes or Pascal Siakam or OG Anunoby or Jakob Poeltl. Again, we don't know how many of those guys will even be back in Toronto next year, but getting someone who can fit in, play off the ball with the upside to then move into more of an on-ball role, kind of similar to Kobe Buffkin, which we talked about yesterday, right? Where the sort of swing skill for him is that on-ball creation, those point guard skills. Same thing with Wallace here. I think, we'll get into some of the weaknesses and the strengths of his game, but the general sort of do-it-all, everyman sort of vibe I think you get from Cason Wallace is really nice. And I think similar to Buffkin, and kind of reiterating, the everydayers who listen to the podcast will know I talked about this yesterday, but if not, go listen to the Kobe Buffkin episode. I'm going to repeat myself here for a sec. When I'm sort of doing the philosophical exercise of, all right, which guys do I think are going to be good NBA players? And this is me talking as not a scout. I'm not a smart person when it comes to scouting college basketball players. I don't have the time or the brain power to watch college basketball all season long. That's where we return to our pals like Raphael Barlow and Kevin O'Connor and Hoops Intellect on YouTube, a really great channel. And all of them are kind of where I'm amalgamating all of these opinions and putting them into my own sort of processing hopper here and coming out with my own thoughts on things. But, when I'm evaluating guys, I typically look at the weaknesses. Are there weaknesses here that are giant red flags, that are maybe things that could undo a guy's development, undo a guy's career, make it so they can't play in meaningful minutes just because there's one thing that's just so glaring? And while there are red flags a little bit with Cason Wallace when it comes to his creation and his ability to get around guys, we'll talk about that in a sec, he does a lot to kind of bring a high floor. He has like a real sort of joie de vivre for playing ball, and like really just seems to try extremely hard, which is something that will be, I think, a nice addition to the Raptors after they didn't try very hard all the time last season. He kind of feels like a bit of a culture setter type, not to get all cliche-ish and all of that. And he does, again, the off-ball stuff, the defense, the three-point shooting on the catch. Like, that's the type of stuff that gives you a high floor. The ceiling, that's nice, go for ceiling, but I ultimately would prefer guys who are going to be NBA players and then hope you can develop along more of a star turn in the years to come, as opposed to just getting someone who one weakness or multiple weaknesses could cause them to just not be effective NBA players. I don't think that's going to be the case with Cason Wallace. He's going to be a good NBA player. How good, I think, will come down to the couple of weaknesses we're going to get into in a second here. But the list of weaknesses from the experts like Kevin O'Connor, Raphael Barlow, on the sort of the scouting report of Cason Wallace, it's pretty slim. There's a couple things there, but a lot of strengths, a lot of things that really pop, and a lot of things that might project into things that could paper over some of the current issues that he has. So I like Cason Wallace quite a bit. He's not maybe my top choice right now. We'll get into some of the reasons why that is in a sec here. But if you're going for a more traditional point guard type, if you're looking for someone to be the long-term guard option next to Scotty Barnes and a guy who can, again, sort of mix and mingle between being on the ball and playing off the ball to leave space for Scotty Barnes to go and create as well, I think Cason Wallace certainly fits. I like the fit of Buffkin with Barnes just a little bit better, but it's not, and I guess that's like ultimately the biggest question here is how do these guys fit alongside Scotty Barnes and his personal timeline? But I think Cason Wallace, you could do much worse if he falls to 13 and the Raptors end up scooping him up. He seems like a very cool player. We'll come back on the other side and get into the reasons why he's a cool player. What makes him good? What makes him a little bit concerning, specifically on the offensive end? His defense feels like it's going to be really, really, really good, maybe even from day one. But we'll get into that in just 1 second. Before we dive into the strengths and weaknesses of Cason Wallace's game, got to tell you about Game Time, which is incredible. If we were doing a scouting report on ticketing sites, it would be all positives for Game Time because there's just no downside. They are wonderful. They make it so buying tickets on the day of the event is not stressful. You can wait up until the day of the event. Maybe your schedule's unclear. You're not sure what you want to do, and you want to go get tickets last minute. I do this all the time. My cousin and I, in the regular season for the Raptors this past year, we would just kind of wait around and see, ooh, Wednesday night, the Hornets are in town. These will be cheap tickets. Let's see. And then they pop up. I wish we had Game Time to go to at this point. I didn't realize it was a thing until the last month or so here since they joined us on Locked On. But you can get way cheaper tickets at Game Time than you can anywhere else, and they promise you that will be the case with the Game Time guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. There's no reason not to go and try Game Time the next time you're looking for last-minute tickets or tickets a few days ahead of time for an event. You get last-minute deals, and it's wonderful. You get two taps on the app, and you're set. They will send your tickets right to your phone, so you don't have to go and sort through your email in the line or anything like that either. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we continue on here. First listen of the day, digging into the scouting report on one Cason Wallace. Again, when I kind of do this stuff, this is not me watching tape of Cason Wallace over the course of a full season and compiling a big scouting notebook. It's me reading the people I trust. Rafael Barlow, Mavs Draft, Richard Stayman over at Locked On NBA Big Board. Kevin O'Connor does a great job with the draft guide over at The Ringer. And then you've got Hoops Intellect, a really wonderful YouTube channel. And then, oh God, I lost the page. I used it yesterday. There's this one page that throws out, I think it's Hoops Intellectual. Apologies if I'm misquoting that. It's in yesterday's show notes, but they do like full 2.5, 3 hour long smash cuts of all the things a player did over the course of the season, good and bad, which are super useful. So all of that is helping to form this opinion that I have on Cason Wallace and the reasons why I'm pretty high on him, but maybe not as high on other guys as I am on other guys, or Buffkin in particular. So the good stuff of Cason Wallace's game. Pretty interesting pull-up game. 59% on pull-ups inside 17 feet per Rafael Barlow on NBA Big Board. That's a really nice thing. Have that mid-range game. It's a super important skill to have in the NBA. The best players in the league excel from the mid-range because those are the shots that the smartest defenses are trying to funnel you to. And so, if you got a guy who's already excelling there, it's a great starting point. There are reasons why it's a little concerning that he's shooting as often as he is from that range that we'll get to in a sec, but you can't deny 59% on pull-ups inside 17 feet. That is good. That is very, very, very good. The defense, obviously, here I think is going to be the calling card for Cason Wallace. He's a point of attack monster. He can, fight through screens, do the thing. He's a really good team defender. That's the thing that really pops. He's almost got like eyes on the back of his head when you watch some of the clips of him, like just almost like the Kawhi, like grabbing a steal without actually looking at it situation, but he does it all the time. And it's not just for steals. Certainly steals are part of it, but he's just bloody good at rotations. And man, did the Raptors need people who were locked in on rotations last season. He almost has, like I said, eyes in the back of his head where the ball is in flight towards the shooter, and the ball arrives at the shooter, and Wallace is already there, arms up, ready to defend the drive or the three. It's really impressive stuff, and that seems to be a thing that's going to carry over wonderfully to the NBA. It's great to have team defenders up and down, and you pair the point of attack defense and the team defense of a Cason Wallace with the wing defense of an OG Anunoby and the rim protection of Jakob Poeltl and the help and sort of, the secondary rim protection of Scotty Barnes, which I think is kind of the thing he offers the most right now defensively. Same with Pascal Siakam when he's on his best. He's a wonderful help side guy. Man, the recipe of a very good defense is there. And the Raptors already had a very good defense. They were number 6 in the NBA after the trade deadline, after adding Jakob Poeltl to the mix. And that was with pretty suspect point of attack defense from Fred VanVleet, who just kind of lost a step moving laterally. And of course, Gary Trent Jr., who's just not a great on ball defender. He's a good guy jumping passing lanes. That's about it. Wallace kind of offers all of the things you want from a defender. And I think it's really, really interesting. Again, he's more than just an on-ball guy. You can play him off. You can play him on bigger guys as well. He's 6'4", but he can probably size up and guard some of, sort of do like the Marcus Smart thing, where Marcus Smart can go and guard a 6'8" wing type, and it's not like a horrible, horrible mismatch. He's not the type of guy who's going to go get, picked apart in a, pulled up by the ball handler in a playoff series and get switched on to and all that stuff. Like, that's not going to be Cason Wallace's lot in life. I truthfully think, just watching the clips of him and just the way that he seems to understand defense, plus the tools he's got, all defense level tools, I think. There's no doubt he's going to be kind of a maniac on that end, and I really, really love that. It's super fun. On offense, it's a little bit more of a sort of mixed bag. I think the thing that I liked about him, sort of digging into some of the tape, really good at sort of starting a possession, then relocating and kind of burning you on a catch and shoot later in the possession. He doesn't kind of stand still once he gets rid of the ball. He can go relocate and make something happen and kind of keep a play alive that way by just creating a new outlet for whoever's got the ball now. 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. That's really good to see, especially on a college team that was pretty cramped with its spacing by all accounts in Kentucky. Again, does a little bit of everything. He's kind of built, I think, like the type of point guard you want to see in 2023. He's big, he's strong, he's beefy. He's not going to get, again, pulled off the floor in a playoff series because he can't be out there due to size issues. And while some of the best point guards in basketball right now are as my neighbor fires up his motorcycle, apologies if that's coming through. But while some of the best point guards in basketball right now are those pull-up threats, obviously Steph Curry, Dame Lillard, etc., I do think maybe the more sort of preferred archetype of a point guard these days is someone who can kind of do it all. You're not dependent on them having the ball in their hands to be effective. As great as Damian Lillard is, when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, yeah, he can catch and shoot threes, but he's not doing a ton for you. Similar to James Harden, traditional point guard, ball in his hands a whole bunch. You're not getting a whole lot of him off the ball. And so with Cason Wallace, it's a little bit more of a versatile skill set, right? He'll be able to run some pick and rolls for you. He'll be able to go get his own shot once in a while with that mid-range game, but he can also play off the ball and cut and scamper around and be a catch and shoot guy. And I think that's kind of what you want in 2023 as, a lot of playmaking responsibility shifts towards big men and wings. And, Scotty Barnes obviously is going to be a big time part of whatever playmaking formula the Raptors put together going forward. And so having someone who can kind of be used in multiple different spots and isn't sort of, okay, he has to be a high pick and roll operator and that's all he's got to him, I think that's really encouraging. That's kind of what you want from a point guard in 2023. It seems to be the consensus that his catch and shoot game is going to be pretty high level. It's the pull-up threes that are really giving him trouble right now. And watching some of the misses on these long smash cuts of his highlights from the year, lowlights in this case, some of those pull-up threes are bricks right out of the hands. And so obviously going to have to refine that. But again, he's got the mid-range game down. And so maybe that indicates that he's got the stroke and touch to be able to step it out a few feet and eventually get that pull-up three-point game going, especially with more space in the NBA, getting real screens set by real big men like Jakob Poeltl. Not a bad thing to consider either. And he did shoot 64.2% at the rim on the season, but doesn't get to the rim the same way that Kobe Buffkin does, for example. Buffkin gets there all the freaking time. I think it was, again, 140 of his 360 attempts on the year were at the rim. It was about 81 of 312 for Cason Wallace. About 25% of his shots come at the rim, which is not bad. That's great. It's a good start, I guess. Not great, but it's a good start on a team that was pretty cramped with not much space or driving lanes to speak of. But that's certainly a thing to keep in mind is, while he can get to the rim, and that's nice, it's not like his bread and butter. He doesn't get there all the time despite his ability to finish there, which is nice. And so that brings us to the drawbacks. And honestly, the big thing for me is the space creation that he doesn't quite have on offense right now. The reason I have Buffkin a little bit higher is just he's got a little more shake and shimmy to him. He can kind of blow by guys. He's got more of an explosive first step. And the biggest knock on Wallace right now seems to be that he just doesn't have a ton of ability to blow by guys and get space for himself. He manages to still get shots off kind of in close quarters in some of the stuff I've watched, but it's not like he's walking into wide open mid-rangers. There's usually a guy on him that he's got to kind of shake or maybe sort of jab step or give a little push off or whatever. And he's able to get those shots up. But again, it's not like the smoothest, oh wow, this guy can kind of create anything from nothing type of situation that maybe you want from a lead guard. It's a good thing he's got that mid-range game because it does feel like a counter to him not totally being able to finish his drives all the time by getting all the way to the cup. So it's great that he's used that counter. We've seen, Gary Trent Jr. not able to get to the rim a ton, but he's countered that with a really nice mid-range game that he's able to use off of his three-point game. So when he gets run off the line, there's something for him to do. It's nice that he has that baked into his game. Wallace does that mid-range game, but he just doesn't get to the rim with quite the frequency you might want from a guy who's going to be your lead guard. It's also worth noting that this concern regarding his pull-up shooting and his ability to kind of create for himself and get by guys could be just a product of playing at Kentucky. And we've seen a long history of guys at Kentucky, guards at Kentucky, operating with a lack of spacing, a lack of offensive ingenuity, a lack of sort of, having the ball in their hands all the time because they're playing on super stacked teams. We've seen plenty of guards in the last 6-8 years come out of Kentucky and then completely explode in the NBA in a way you didn't really expect based on their college careers. We think Devin Booker, Jamal Murray, Tyrese Maxey, Emmanuel Quickley, Tyler Hero, all these guys really popped in the NBA in a way they weren't really able to flourish in college at Kentucky. And maybe when you have that much of a track record of this being a trend with guards coming out of Kentucky, maybe that gives you some hope that Cason Wallace can actually take the next step. I think there's a difference. Devin Booker has a clear good first step. Jamal Murray can blow by anybody. Maxey, Quickley, Hero, all these guys have that really electric first step who can step into mid-range shots after creating and rise in a fire and all that stuff. Wallace he might not have the athleticism to have that first step. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a good NBA player because, again, he does so many really good, smart NBA player things. But that is maybe the one sort of counter to, once he leaves Kentucky, it's going to be fine. Well, some guys just don't have that burst, and that, I think, matters at both the college and NBA level. I think there's a chance that just becomes a bit of an inhibitor for him. But again, he's 19 years old. These things develop, and maybe there's some athleticism training or whatever that goes into building that first step. I don't really know how these things work, but you got to look at the history. Guys coming out of Kentucky tend to overperform in the NBA compared to what they did as guards with the Wildcats. So that's something to at least be a little optimistic about as far as improving upon the drawbacks for Cason Wallace. Again, there's not much. Those are the things. It's the pull-up threes and the first step and the creating space for himself that are kind of the consensus biggest drawbacks with Wallace's game. Everything else, he just, the word coach's dream is thrown around a lot in the analysis of him. He does a lot of things that are going to help you win basketball games. And like I said, he just really seems to care a lot and really try very hard and is super locked in and feels like the type of guy you're very happy to add to your team and is going to give you a lot of good, positive things over the course of time, even if maybe there are some drawbacks. We'll come back on the other side, get into the sort of the go-to player comparison for Cason Wallace, which is probably unfair, but is still a good one, and I think there's a little bit of merit to it, while not all that much merit. Plus, will he be there for the Raptors at 13? What are the teams ahead of the Raptors thinking when it comes to point guards, and where is Cason Wallace being mocked? We'll get into all of that in a hot second here. Before we dive in, however, got to tell you about our friends over at Bird Dogs, who have really helped me find comfort in the summertime. The weather's heating up now. It's getting warm. And while I like to wear shorts, I'm a shorts guy for sure. I'm always the first dum-dum you see wearing shorts in March on the first warm day because I run hot. Sometimes shorts just aren't comfortable. They get all bunched up. They're not the most breathable fabrics or whatever it might be. And they're kind of defeating the purpose of wearing shorts, which is heat relief. Bird Dogs doesn't give you that problem. They are super comfortable, super airy, super light, super breezy, and very, very, very versatile. You can wear them in all different settings. They have swim trunks. They have Oxfords. They got gym shorts. They got khakis. You can go and pick the pair that is your right fit. And a wonderful thing about Bird Dogs, they have maybe figured out the future of underwear. Sometimes you don't want to wear underwear either in the summer because it's hot. too many layers. But with Bird Dogs, they have a built-in comfort lining that can serve as your underwear. What? We're living in the future. It's unbelievable. Go right now. Check out Bird Dogs. birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA is the place to go. When you enter the promo code LockedOnNBA, all one word, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Go check them out. birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA, promo code LockedOnNBA. All right, let's round this bad boy out, finishing off our chat about Cason Wallace, the point guard, combo guard, whatever, large guard type out of Kentucky. And the sort of lack of a clear positional distinction, I think, does play into the sort of most often used player comp for Cason Wallace. And look, before I get into it, I don't love player comps. I kind of disagree with the entire notion of player comps because I think the most enjoyable thing about basketball, the thing that I love the most, is every player is one of one. Every player is unique stylistically and has their own flavor and brand. And I don't really buy into the idea of comps. Sure, there are like certain skills that might be comparable to other players in a lot of cases, but for the most part, every player is their own thing. And so player comps are not super useful to me, and I kind of disagree with the notion. That said, got a listener question that came in from Arthur08 in the Discord. Join the Discord. Get your questions in. Who asks, how accurate are the Jrue Holiday comparisons? And yeah, that's what, I think Raphael has mentioned Jrue Holiday as a comp, and Kevin O'Connor definitely has Jrue Holiday listed as a comp. And I don't think it's like crazy off base. Look, like Holiday's awesome. He's arguably like the second best player on a championship team, or second most important. I don't know. Like his defense is ridiculous. I like Chris Middleton, but I think I love Jrue Holiday more. I also like Jrue Holiday's maybe one of my like 10 to 15 favorite players of the last 10 years. So I'm a little biased here, but I love Jrue Holiday. If Cason Wallace were Jrue Holiday, I would be a pig in my own excrement, just rolling around having the best time of my life. But yeah. The thing with Holiday is he's not going to be your lead guard all the time, right? Like he can do it for flashes, he can do it in moments, he can carry a bench unit, he can run it if your best player's out and you need it in a pinch, and he will have some massive games. There will also be games where the shot's just off and he doesn't quite help you on the offensive end, but he's also an incredible defender, maybe the best guard defender there is over the last 10 years. And if Cason Wallace can go down that path, sign me up. That sounds awesome. The shooting, I think, maybe is a little more encouraging for Cason Wallace than it was with Jrue Holiday as a college player. And look, this is hard to compare because Jrue Holiday played in college in 2009-10, back before like the full breadth of the three-point revolution took place. And like, so Cason Wallace has come up in a world where three-point shooting is like super duper important. He was like 6 years old when Jrue Holiday came into the NBA. So lots of things have changed since Jrue Holiday's college career, but Jrue Holiday was a 31% three-point shooter in college. Cason Wallace, 35%. That's pretty good. And Jrue Holiday went on to become a very good three-point shooter, had a couple dalliances with 40% seasons, has been a 37%-ish guy for his entire career. And again, a lot of the talk about Wallace is that his catch-and-shoot three-point shot, super clean, super good-looking, could be like a knockdown shooter on catch-and-shoots. Is the pull-ups that are an issue. And I don't think Jrue Holiday has ever been considered like a catch-and-shoot, marksman or anything like that. He's a good shooter, but not like going to change your life with, 10 threes a game type of situation. And Wallace might have more capacity to do that. He's not going to be Klay Thompson or anything like that, but no one is. So it makes sense. Like, it's a decent comp. Again, Jrue Holiday, if you can become Jrue Holiday, he's like an all-NBA player, I think, once. He's been an all-star. He's excellent. He's been all-defense. He's like won playoff series by himself. Thinking back, obviously he had Anthony Davis with the Pelicans when they swept the Blazers, but Holiday was the reason they won that series so handedly. Just demolished Dame Lillard. If you got a guy like Wallace who can become that type of player, that's incredible. Like, teams would die to have Jrue Holiday on their roster. Man, imagine Jrue Holiday on the Raptors. It would be awesome. It's not to say Cason Wallace would become that, but the archetype certainly is there of that sort of combo guard type who can sort of be a chameleon between the on-ball point guard role and the more shooting guard heavy role where the defense is maybe more the priority. I like Cason Wallace quite a bit. Thing is, I don't think he's going to be there at 13. He seems like he's kind of a little bit more in sort of an upper tier than, say, Kobe Buffkin. Wallace and kind of Anthony Black feel like they're maybe the first couple guards in that range who are going to come off the board. And so it seems like he's probably going to be gone before 13, which is a shame for those who love Cason Wallace. The Jazz right now at 9 are being mocked. Wallace in the Kevin O'Connor mock draft, and in Raphael's mock draft at NBA Big Board, he's going 8th to the Wizards, and the Wizards could sorely use a point guard like a Wallace. And so I think it's going to be hard to see him fall all the way. I doubt the Mavs would take him. They have Luka. Like, do they need like an on-ball point guard type? Maybe they do. Maybe that would be a perfect complement to Luka. It'd actually be kind of nice having a guard who can defend next to him. But, the Mavs might also just trade that pick. They're a wild card here. The Magic, I suppose, could go there, but maybe the Magic, like we talked about yesterday, are going to skew away from younger guards and go for more of a veteran solution, like a Fred VanVleet. There's a chance he falls. Like, there's like a whole morass of guys here. And so if teams value a Bufkin or Grady Dick or a Jordan Hawkins or an Anthony Black or Nick Smith a little higher than a Cason Wallace, then maybe there's a chance he slips through the cracks during that run of teams who could be in the range for point guards. But I would bet against Wallace being there at 13. If he's there at 13, you scoop him up and laugh if Bufkin's off the board, in my estimation. And I would guess that if Cason Wallace is there at 13, Bufkin is probably gone a little bit earlier, just with the way the guard run might go. So I think, I'm not upset if Cason Wallace is the pick at 13. He's number 2 on my personal board of the 2 guys I've talked about right now between him and Bufkin. But Bufkin is number 1, because I think he rocks. I really it's no sort of shame on Cason Wallace to not be on the same tier as Kobe Bufkin in my mind right now. So, I don't think Wallace is the type of guy you trade up for either. Like, again, there's a lot of good to like there, but there's going to be good in whatever player falls to 13 for the Raptors here, I think. There's going to be a lot of guys in that mix. Someone's going to slip through the cracks and be there, and I think you just happily scoop them up as opposed to trading up here. I don't think Wallace has, like, no-brainer, this guy's going to be, like, a multi-time all-star potential where you have to go and do it. Maybe the front office thinks differently. They're much smarter than I am, and if that's the case, whatever. But I think, you hope he falls there to 13 if you're a Wallace head, but I don't see them trading up to get him, and I ultimately don't think it's super likely he will be there at 13. So apologies to the Cason Wallace heads out there. We're going to wrap it there. Thank you so much for tuning into the show once again. Thanks for the kind words that some folks sent over about the Bufkin episode yesterday. I'm really enjoying this draft stuff. Normally, I don't like the draft very much. It's just kind of not my thing, but I'm having fun diving in this year. Lots of interesting players. I think just sort of the quality and quantity of guys at 13 who could be there for the Raptors has me really fascinated. And so we'll continue these with, into next week. We'll do, we'll get into Grady Dick. We'll get into Jordan Hawkins. We'll get into a handful more guys again. We'll probably do like a dozen of these episodes before the draft ends up coming upon us in about a month's time. But in the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in. Go listen to the Kobe Bufkin episode yesterday if you missed it. And we'll be back again on Monday. Vivek Jacob will be along for his typical Monday appearance. Maybe there will be a coach hired by the Raptors by then. Maybe. No, they're not doing it. It's going to take forever, isn't it? With that, though, thank you. You're the best. Please tune in the show on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe, rate, review, etc., etc. Follow the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors. Follow me at Woodley Sean on Twitter if you're still using Twitter. And most importantly, join the Locked On Raptors Discord. It is super duper fun and honestly has replaced Twitter for me as the place where I go to talk about basketball with people from the internet. It's just way more fun. So come and hang out in the Locked On Raptors Discord. The link is in the description of the podcast, both on the audio and video feeds. And we will leave it there. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. We'll talk to you Monday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging.